Welcome into another edition of the FutureSox Roundup. My name is Elijah Evans, joined as always by my co-host Jeff Cohen. We are back. We are live. We are here. Exciting week in the farm for the White Sox this week. There's a lot going on. There was a lot of excitement. There was a lot of buzz. Just in general, I think a productive week. I think some really big performances, some smaller performances, a little bit of everything, kind of in between the margins. But we're excited to kind of get into things. You were able to get to see a bunch of both Kannapolis and Charlotte this week, particularly Kannapolis, which is a really exciting roster all around right now in single A. So there's a lot of fun stuff going on as we head into, almost a month down in the minor league season. So we're getting there, we're getting rolling. And yeah, here we are. How are you doing, Jeff? How's the week?
Yeah, it was a good week. Not so great for the affiliates record-wise, but you're right. A lot of great performances at every affiliate. A lot of guys to cover tonight.
Yeah, for sure. We've definitely got plenty to talk about today. I'm going to let you cruise control on some of these guys that you saw in person. We'll talk about every affiliate. We'll go down the ranks, but we'll start at the big league level. The big league level, finally, Edgar Caro, welcome to the big leagues. We've been saying this for a bit. We talked about this last year. I was in the camp that, he could have broke camp and I wouldn't have been upset about it just because of how well-rounded he is as a player. He proves himself in a few weeks in Charlotte. Looked pretty dominant there. The overall approach is good, solid contact. The defense looks steady behind the plate. He's up in Chicago now, needs everyday at bats. How's everybody doing tonight? What's up, Trey? He needs everyday at bats. Like, that's the biggest thing I'll say about Caro. And we don't need to dive into too much. He's played 4 or 5 games now. I think he is the guy who, any of these top hitters, right? Like, when they come up, they need to play every day. I don't need to see Nick Maton DH games. I don't need to see, whoever else would be taking DH at bats. If you're not ready to have Caro catch every day, which I understand, you want to ease him in, you got to work on the defense, figure things out, get him adjusted, right? That's fine. Every day he's not catching, he should be DHing, and that's not even a question in my opinion. I think that I don't even think it's close. I think he needs to be playing every day. He should be playing every day. Have you been able to watch any of the clips so far of Caro?
Not yet, not yet. I was pretty tied
Looks
up
good.
with minor league ball this week. The box score's been looking great, that's for sure.
Yeah, again, it's not pretty, right? Like, it's not amazing. He's not standing out. He's not getting hits every day, whatever. But like, that's not what we expect from him off the bat. Like, I don't expect a guy who's going to immediately be, one of the best players in the. Well, actually, he is. He might be one of the best players in the team. What am I saying? Like, I don't know what I'm saying here. I do think he will be one of the best hitters on this team. Ian says this right here. Like, it's he's going to be a big league bat. He has an approach of a big league hitter. He has the ability to be a big league hitter, and he's already showing that pretty early. 5 hits, drives in 3 runs in his first handful of games. He comes off the bench to win the White Sox the game pretty much against the Red Sox on Saturday. Just in general, this is a guy who's ready for this level. He's ready to be there. He is a piece, and he needs to be a piece that plays every single day.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. Probably is the best hitter on the team, especially the way Robert's struggling.
Probably one of them for sure. So aside from Caro, unfortunately, right as you get Edgar Caro, Chase Meidroth goes down with an injury, a thumb injury. I remember something about his thumb bothering him actually in spring training even, I think. And I think that's something that has been nagging, and now it seems like he's been pushing through it a little bit past few days once he got the big league promotion. In general, it's a bummer, but like, he'll be back. He'll be fine. Bobby Dahlback gets another chance at the big league level. Bobby Dahlback, let's see it, man, I guess, right? Like, he went 9 for 16 in Charlotte this past week. Was absolutely mashing in Charlotte, 5 extra base hits in 4 games. Sure, Bobby Dahlback, let's see what you got. He'll get a few weeks here on this roster probably. If he really stands out, he might stick around, and if not, so be it. He'll head back to Charlotte probably.
Yeah, it's funny. As I was prepping for our podcast tonight, and I knew you were going to ask me about Charlotte, and I thought, I'm probably not going to mention Dahlbeck, but he had the best week of anyone. So yeah, good luck. Hopefully he surprises on the upside. They could use a break.
Yeah, that'd be nice. It'd be nice if you get something out of him. That's fine by me. And then the other roster news, Martin Perez goes down on the IL. Probably TJ. Sounds like TJ. We'll see. There's all this, ambiguity with pitcher injuries these days, but it does seem like he's going to be out for the substantive while, likely the whole season at this point. Jared Schuster has actually been really solid in Charlotte this year, takes that roster spot. I think that he's probably, he's I think he's more of that long relief guy than anything else. I don't really see him claiming a starting spot, but I think he may get starts for now. He may get spot starts in that Perez spot, or he'll just be another bullpen guy if Bryce Wilson gets the start. However they shake it out, it's probably going to be Schuster and Bryce Wilson getting those bulk innings, regardless of if there's an opener or not, in that Perez spot in the rotation. So fine with it. It's all you can really do at this point. Clearly, there's nobody. I mean, it's not a bad idea. If you sign Spencer Turnbull, I wouldn't mind seeing Spencer Turnbull. I think that's, you'd have to build up. It would still take him a while to get into the rotation, right? So that's like a whole other type of thing, right? But in general, I think that this is going to be a make shop thing, right? You're not Nick Nastrini, Howard Iriarte, Owen White, like Owen White coming off of a rough start after a few good starts. Like there's nobody really in Charlotte that you can say, hey, here's a starting pitcher to plug into the rotation every fifth day and feel good about. For now, Schuster makes sense. I think that's about it. We'll see what happens there. Is there anybody else in Charlotte you think it could, maybe Justin Dunn, right?
Yeah. He actually had two really good starts. He looks the best of the starters. I would have said Owen White prior to this week, but he had a rough one. But yeah, Justin Dunn by far has been really the
Yeah.
best, almost the only effective starter.
Yeah, that's where we're at. I think, this is probably right. Ian says this. That is very true. I don't think he will be making the White Sox roster at any point soon. That's all I got to talk about at the big league level. We've got some comments about Miguel Vargas. I do agree with this point by Vince here. Like Vargas is going to get at bats. I don't see, at least from now until midseason, I see no way that he doesn't get at bats. It's been rough so far. I think that he's going to continue to get at bats because of the situation, because of the trade, because of the value he's got attached to his name, right? He's going to get those at bats. Another guy who I don't think needs at bats from at this, I'm even less interested in Lenyn Sosa at bats personally than I am in Miguel Vargas at bats. I don't really see it happening. I think they've given him a chance 3 years in a row now to show something. He's getting innings right now, and he's showing absolutely nothing to me. There's a couple moments here and there, but not a ton to watch there. This is another question, like we mentioned, as we head down to Charlotte. We can answer this question, and then we'll dive into a few guys we want to talk about in Charlotte particularly. But this is a good question because it's been rough for Iriarte. The stuff has ticked back. The command hasn't been there. He hasn't been going late into games. I think that Iriarte, the issue with him is like the idea was always, he could be a nasty reliever if he doesn't get there with the command, but the stuff remains the same. The stuff hasn't been the same. The stuff hasn't been at the level. He's still going to get these starts probably because of how he's valued. I don't know if Iriarte right now you can't even say, the stuff is so good, put him in the bullpen and he'll roll, right? Like you can't make that case because the stuff hasn't been as good as it was 2 years ago. So Iriarte's got to get right. I don't know what it looks like. Maybe it's a little bit of a phantom IL stint for him. Maybe it's just pushing through a couple starts, trying to make some adjustments as he goes. But it's been rough so far, right, Jeff?
Well, we knew that the Charlotte rotation was not going to be pretty because we knew that's where the effect of all the injuries to all the starters like Adams and Bush, that's where it was going to be felt. And boy, it sure is. It's already rough in Charlotte, and we're just out of the gate.
It's been a little rough. Let's talk about some of the performances we want to note about there, because we talk about the rotation. We might as well just keep going with the rotation there, right? So we will see. This is exactly right. This is how Ian breaks it down here, saying he's around 94 with the fastball. He was hitting 90. He was consistently 96s when the White Sox traded for him, right? He's not commanding the fastball. The slider has movement, but it's not consistent enough with the strikes. You need fastball command to make a slider effective. His changeup has been here and there. It flashed being a plus pitch at times in 2023 a few years ago, and really has not taken any steps forward, unfortunately, for Iriarte. So that rotation is struggling, but help is on the way. Tyler Schweitzer promoted to Charlotte per our very own Ian Eskridge. This is a fun one because Schweitzer was piggybacking Grant Taylor to start the year, just because of the depth in that Birmingham rotation, right? They had 6 starters and only 5 spots, so he was kind of pitching the last 5 or 6 innings following Grant Taylor starts to start the season. At this point, the Sox just said, this is a guy that's been in the organization for a while. He looks dominant out of the gate this year. He just all around is an innings getter. He just eats innings. He churns outs. He gets things done. Tyler Schweitzer makes his way to Charlotte, Jeff. I'm looking forward to getting you having another look at him. You've obviously have seen him when he was younger in the organization, when he was coming up through Canny and Winston. And now we get a look at Tyler Schweitzer at the highest level. And honestly, I would not be surprised at all if Tyler Schweitzer is a guy that debuts this season and ends up getting starts, either starts or long relief for innings for the White Sox in the second half of the year, because there's not a lot of pitching depth anymore at the upper levels. There's a lot of guys from Double A down, but in terms of guys in Triple A, there's not a lot of options there. And honestly, Schweitzer might be a more stable option than an Iriarte or an Estrini at this point if you really just need a guy that can get you some innings.
Yeah, the Schweitzer that we have seen so far this year in Birmingham, if that continues in Charlotte, he immediately moves to the head of the line for first man up for a rotation spot start in Chicago. Yeah.
Yeah, the only tricky thing is he's it's not on the 40 man. You got to create 40 man spots. That's a consistent struggle right now with the White Sox organization. There's still plenty of guys, and there will continue to be plenty of guys, in my opinion, that aren't really needing to be on the 40 man. We'll see what that looks like. Overall, though, Charlotte is heading into this week at 7-14. It's definitely been a rough going here. We talk about Schweitzer. A couple hitters we should mention in Charlotte. Everybody's asking about this. I've gotten things in my Twitter comments about this. I know you've heard about this. You're on the wagon for this as well. When do we see Tim Elko in Chicago is the question that a lot of people want to know. This past week, Tim Elko in 5 games was 7 for 20, 3 home runs, 5 RBIs, 3 walks, only 5 strikeouts. I think that is the biggest thing to see from Elko lately, has been a much improved approach. He's still going to whiff a lot. He's still going to strike out a lot. That's going to be his profile at every single level of baseball. If he's able to walk a little bit more and in general is just getting more effective at bats, taking pitches a little bit more often, chasing a little bit less out of the zone on breaking balls, then you're looking at a guy in Elko who could at least be worth big league innings, right? 8 walks across 17 games, 21 strikeouts. It's still not quite there for the approach you want to see from a high-level big leaguer, but I do think at this point, what else is there to see from Elko in AAA?
I was at his 2 home run game this week, and he hit over 850 feet worth of home runs in that game. I mean, they were both massive. It was so impressive. Now, seriously, though, if you look a year or 2 down the road and you start to think about what the White Sox lineup might be as Caro and Mydroth and other guys are getting the call, where's the power going to come from if Robert is traded? There's no power on that team right now. Hopefully, Braden Montgomery can add a bit.
Yeah. You're looking
But
at Braden. You're looking at, you're looking at Colson to be a guy that can get you power. Obviously,
right,
that's been, a tricky situation, right? And both Caro and Teal should get you some power, but neither of them are necessarily key power. I think, yeah, that's a good question. I think you're going to have to add power, right? I think that's an unavoidable situation, is they're going to have to add a free agent or two in the next year or two that have some legit pop. And Elko could be that guy. I still have a hard time seeing him consistently getting on base enough at the big league level. But if he can give you some serious power bursts here and there, and he can get hot for a few games and hit some homers, and he can, sure, I'm all ears, and I'm down to be proven wrong. I've been proven wrong with Elko for 2 years now. Honestly, I really have never been super high on his upside at the big league level, but I think he's probably up at some point. I think it's closer to mid-season maybe than it is soon, just because. Yeah, we'll see. At what point did you just say, hey, he deserves these innings over Andrew Vaughn? I don't know what time that is. Andrew Vaughn's starting to heat up this past week as well, so I don't know.
well, again, that's a whole nother discussion, Andrew Vaughn, and until the White Sox make their decision what they're going to do with him, Tim Elko's in limbo. But I guess what I would say is, if you knew Elko was going to strike out 30% of the time, would you, over 500 at bats, would you take 30 home runs from him?
Yes. Yeah, I think so. I think you take that with this roster for sure. If you can take 30 home runs from anybody, I'd take it, to be honest.
Right.
But I don't know if he ticks down to a 20 homer guy with a ton of swing and miss and a low on base percentage, then it becomes like, oh, is he just Andrew Vaughn, right? Like, I don't, right? Like, is he? I'm fine with the difference. I think this is, I think that's true. He makes the point here. Andrew Vaughn is a 26 WRC plus. Like, yeah, Andrew Vaughn hasn't been good now for this entire season. He's had a couple good games this week, whatever. But like, I'm down to give Tim Elko a chance. I think that the expectations will probably be a little too high from the fan base as a collective. And I don't know, he's definitely not the same type of hitter as, as a Caro or a Teal or even some of these other guys in the system. I don't think he's as good of a hitter and as well-rounded of a hitter. But yeah, I'm here for it. Give him some bats, get him a DH at bats, get him some first base at bats and face the Vaughn. Like, he's 26 years old. Like, if he's going to do it, he's going to do it soon at the big league level. And if he's not going to do it at the big league level, then he probably won't ever, right? Like,
Yeah, and again, not to put too fine a point on it, but there's a big difference between a 30% strikeout rate with 30 home runs and a 35% strikeout rate with 20 home
yeah,
runs. Yeah,
massive. Of
huge.
course, yeah. The big you can't. He's got to get the strikeout rate to 30 or below to have any chance of sticking at the big league level, and that's something that he hasn't quite done yet. But this season, it's been a little better. He's walking a few more times. He's striking out a little bit less. We'll see. We'll see what it looks like. I'd love to see him. I think it's time. There's plenty of at bats in this lineup that are not doing much right now, so I'm perfectly happy to see some Tim Elko at bats. Let's talk some Colson Montgomery. Colson Montgomery back in the lineup this week. He had the few days off with Ryan Fuller a week and a half ago. It's been a rough season for Colson. Like, it's been really ugly. A ton of strikeouts. Generally speaking, the numbers are nowhere where he wants them to be. This past week, though, 5 games for Colson, gets back into that everyday rhythm, goes 7 for 24, good for a 292 on base or 292 average, 1 homer. A nice, still 9 strikeouts and 24 bats. That's the thing where I'm just like, I don't know. That's just not who Colson is as a hitter. That's what's frustrating to watch. He's not that guy. Like, he's always been a guy who can when he was coming up in the pipeline, right? It was like he minimized walks, he minimized strikeouts, he walked a lot, he worked counts, and he did what he played to his strengths without trying to do too much. And now it just still feels like he's just doing too much. We'll take the progress, right? 7 hits in 5 games. That is a big step up from the past 2 weeks. Still just not quite there in terms of what we know Colson Montgomery can be.
Yeah, and it's above my pay grade to figure out what's going on there. But when I'm at the ballpark, I talk to scouts, I talk to coaches, I talk to anyone who I think will respond. And someone who I think knows his stuff told me, I said, do you see any changes this week with Colson? This was a few days ago. And he said, yeah, he looks like he's on top of the plate a little more, but his swing is still too long. Take that for what it's worth. I don't know. Hopefully, hopefully this 290 average is a lot of things to come. But yeah, the 9 strikeouts. I don't know what to make of that.
It always seems like he's forcing it a little bit more right now. I still think in general he's trying to pull everything, and it's like I've talked about this with plenty of the guys at FutureSox. Like, it's where just play to your strengths and play to where the ball's pitched to you, right? If you're getting a lot of outside stuff, take the ball the opposite field. Colson Montgomery is a strong enough, capable enough hitter where he doesn't need to pull things to impact the ball and to have that power juice, right? Like, a similar thing to George Walkow, and is another guy who doesn't need to do things, right? Like, this is a good point for me in here. Ian says he's been keeping his front shoulder a little bit more closed, just help with the contact this past week. Yeah, I'm hoping. I didn't watch a ton of Charlotte this week. I saw the clips of him. I would need to dive into the video more. I hope that he continues to make those adjustments, make those changes. But I do think there is a level of his approach issue that just is a big issue here, along with the mechanics maybe being tweaked a little bit. Like, the approach just hasn't been what it needs to be for him to succeed at the highest level. So I think give him more time, right? Like, there's nowhere else to go for Colson, right? Like, there's nothing to do here. You're not bringing him to the big leagues right now. You're not demoting him at any time, right? Like, he's going to be in Charlotte for a while. Week by week, we'll continue to check in and we'll see the adjustments made, and we'll see from there if he can break Chicago at some point this year and show that he's ready to be a big league player. And, this week was better than last, so we'll take it.
All right. Enough Charlotte. Let's head to Birmingham.
Yeah, I was going to say one quick thing to mention. Last thing is Brandon Drury. Brandon Drury's back in Charlotte, or back with the organization, re-signs. I expect him to be in Chicago probably in the next month or so, once there's an infielder that's ready to be DFA'd or an injury or whatever it may be. I think after another week or 2 of games, Drury should probably be in Chicago. Heading down to Birmingham. We'll start on the hitting side of things. I'm going to pull up the weekly stats here, but I think that Birmingham is a lineup without any, mainstay guys that we're really keyed in on, but a couple guys that have been pretty good and a couple guys that have given solid at bats. We'll talk about the middle infield duo here. We'll start with that. William Bergoya and Jacob Gonzalez, both with 5 hits on the week. Jacob Gonzalez flashing a little bit more of the approach that he was touted for at one point. 4 walks, 6 strikeouts for him this week, 5 hits and 17 at bats. pretty solid week for Gonzalez, all things considered. And then William Bergoya, 5 hits in 15 at bats, 5 for 15 with a double, 1 walk, 2 strikeouts, 1 stolen base. I think Bergoya is the one that I'm more interested in here. I think Bergoya has actually been pretty impressive, all things considered, this season. I don't really. I don't know. It's hard to project him because there is a limit on the upside just because he's never going to have any real power. He's not a guy that's shown any power at this point in his career. You can't really. It's hard. It's hard to be a big league regular when you don't have, he has 1 career minor league homer. But Bergoya's approach, his contact, and his speed is pretty excellent. I think I don't know. There's a long way to go, but Bergoya in this Birmingham lineup is one of the more interesting guys for me at this point, and I'm enjoying watching him play this season because he doesn't look overmatched at all. For a guy that's only 20 years old and being pushed to the Double A level because of a strong spring, he looks pretty comfortable there, and he's hitting the ball well, making contact, showing off his speed, and doing all the things that he does well.
Yeah, I saw him a lot in Winston-Salem last year. I was really impressed. Yeah.
So we'll see. We'll see with Bergoya, but another good week from him. Jacob Gonzalez with a solid week. Good to see for sure from him. But I do think there's still this lineup as a whole in Birmingham is still one of the weaker ones in the organization. Riku Nishida, your guy Jeff, he just gets on base. Like that's the cool thing about Riku. In 6 games this week, he goes 4 for 17, but then walks 6 times and steals 5 bags. So in typical Nishida fashion, a 458 on base percentage this past week, just gets on base, steals bases, doesn't strike out much. He actually did strike out a good amount this past week, which is surprising for him. So that's a little bit higher than usual. But doing all the fun things we like to see from Nishida, but not a ton to report here on the lineup in Birmingham otherwise.
No, there's a real power vacuum there in the middle of the lineup. So,
and there's some guys that have that juice with a guy like who has DJ Gladney and Wilfred Veras, who both kind of struggled this past week. Not much there. I'm hoping to see some of those guys break free and start to juice a little more power into that lineup.
Yeah, and there's a guy we're going to talk about in Winston-Salem who might provide us a little juice in the middle of the lineup for sure.
Yeah, I'm thinking so for sure. It's funny. Somebody just commented that. We're going to get to that soon in a few here, Robert. The other guys to talk about in Birmingham, we'll talk a couple pitchers real quick. Wikelman Gonzalez turning in a pretty, a pretty solid past 2 starts. He made the double start this week in Birmingham, going on Tuesday and then again yesterday. He, in 2 starts, 9 innings, 7 hits, 3 runs, 12 strikeouts as well for Gonzalez. Definitely a sign of improvement for him. The walks still, 7 walks in 9 innings. I think Gonzalez, the reason that I see him probably as a long-term reliever is just generally because of the command. I think overall he looked good, though. He looked like he is figuring some things out. The command was definitely better yesterday than his first start, and he's getting some effective outs there. So Gonzalez, that 4th piece in the Crochet deal, right? Like I think with him, it's nice. You keep him as a starter for sure. You see what happens. And if he transitions to the bullpen by next season, that's cool. This is a guy who's still very young and early in his general development. So I'm not too worried about what we'll see. He's got time. He's 23. I guess he's not that young. I thought he was 22. But after pitching in Double A all last season, I think he'll be there pretty much all this season. Hopefully it'll stick as a starter, and we'll see from there with Gonzalez.
Wouldn't you guess Riley Gowans is going to be the next guy up now that Schweitzer's gone?
I think probably. Gallons had a really rough start this week, didn't make it out of the first inning. So ups and downs, but I think so. I think Riley Gowans is probably the next guy up just because there's going to be a lot of patience exerted with all of the other guys in the rotation with Taylor, Schultz, Hagan, and Gonzalez. All 4 of those guys are going to be taken pretty cautiously. I think they'll all spend the majority of the season in Birmingham, if not the whole season.
And, another guy we're going to get sort of getting ahead of myself, but Lucas Gordon is doing pretty well. So he could go to Birmingham. That could free up Gowans to go to Charlotte and plug a few holes in the dike there.
Yeah, I think hopefully getting some more guys to Charlotte to help out there will be helpful in the near future. The other guy to talk about, Hagen Smith, a really solid 5 innings, 3 hits, 1 run, no walks, which is great to see. He did hit a batter, but and 5 strikeouts as well for Hagen. The command for Hagen just hasn't fully been there this season. It's been up and down. It's been dicey for the most part. But this time he settles in, has probably one of his, he's had he's had 3 starts now. The second one was really rough, doesn't make it out of the first inning. The other 2 generally have been good. The first one was a little more dominant, but he walked a lot of guys. Really good to see Hagen not walk anybody this start, and just generally look like more of the Hagen that we've seen, and know he can be. It's going to be a learning process, right? This guy is not instantly going to be. I think some people expected him to just immediately go and dominate Birmingham, and he might in a few weeks we might be looking back and saying, "Oh, Hagen's destroying double hitters," and he easily could be. But he's also a guy that only pitched a couple games in Winston last year, was coming out of the SEC. There's plenty of things to like there from Hagen. I think he's going to keep getting better and better. He did start that outing really strong, struck out 4 of his first 6, right? Like, he's got the stuff to destroy any hitters at this level. We know that. We've said that for a long time, and he turned in a quality start this weekend and was definitely better on the command front, which is good to see.
Yeah. And you know what? It's not fun to pitch when the weather's cold and gross. I really do think there's something to be said that if the weather warms up a little bit in Birmingham, that so will these pitchers. They'll get loose. That fastball will have a little more life to it. I'm not worried. Yeah, obviously not worried at all about Hagen. And before we move on, just a quick shout out to two relievers. One, Andrew Dahlquist, 2019 third round draft pick, now in the bullpen, and year to date, I think 9 innings pitched, 1 hit, 2 walks, 6 strikeouts. I mean, really looking good. And I think Dahlquist and Peyton Paulette, both being multi-inning relievers, again could offer some help to Charlotte, because Charlotte's going through relievers at a pretty quick pace as well.
Yeah, Dahlquist shifted to the pen last year, was pretty good in Birmingham. He's not a guy he has had pretty. Actually, last year the strikeout numbers are pretty good. This year the strikeout numbers are a little low. Last year in 47 innings, he pitched to a 3.06 ERA, 52 strikeouts across 47 innings, right? Did walk a fair amount of guys, but this season the command's been good. Only 2 walks across 9 innings. Yeah, like you said, 1 hit allowed. So basically nobody's hitting Dahlquist at all so far. He has been shoving so far out of that bullpen. I think he's a guy, considering he's been with the organization for 6 years now, I could definitely see him in Charlotte in the pretty near future.
Yeah, yeah. All right, Winston-Salem.
Yeah, take it away. You want to start with hitters or pitchers?
Let's go with hitters. Let's go right to Ryan Galaney. He had another strong week, and he's been on fire from the get-go this year. He was 9 for 28 this week with a triple and 2 homers, 2 walks, only 4 strikeouts. That's good.
Yeah, Galaney's mashing. He's really, really hitting. He's probably been the best overall hitter in the system this season so far. He's just doing everything right now. I mean, that's a guy who, in a similar ilk to Tim Elko, right? Like, he's always going to have some whiff to his game. But last year, honestly, pretty good plate approach for the most part. 106 games last season between Canny and Winston. 96 strikeouts, 55 walks, really racking up some of those walks last year. And this is a guy who, also had 17 home runs last season between the levels. He was dominating Kannapolis. Now he gets to Winston. He starts this season in Winston again after finishing there last year, right? Like, last year he had to make some adjustments. He got to Winston and he definitely saw the numbers tick down a significant notch from Canny. Now he starts the season at Winston, and he looks like he's ready to go. He looks like he's prepared for this level. He's got a 992 OPS now through his first 15 games of the season, 9 extra base hits in those 15 games. He's walking half the amount as he's striking out, that's a pretty good rate. If you're gonna walk, half the amount you strike out as a corner bat, you're gonna be able to survive like that. And Galaney, he just looks good. He's the best hitter in this lineup so far, and honestly, I think that with him, he's just settled into the high A level now, and I'm ready to see what he can do at Birmingham. Not immediately, maybe, but sometime in May, probably. I think he's going to head towards Birmingham just because there is a lack of consistent production in that Birmingham lineup, and Galaney being, an experienced 4-year college guy, like, I'm ready to see it. I think we're going to have him on the pod soon, actually, to talk to him about his hot start. But Galaney looks really good. 24 years old, 23 draft pick. Like, I think he's in Birmingham in the near future, Jeff.
Yeah, I'd say Memorial Day. If he can keep his bat going through May, Memorial Day looks like a good time for the bump. And the other guy who really had a big week in Winston was Gerald Perez. He's got some thump in that bat, Elijah.
Yeah, Harold Perez is fascinating, right? Because you look at the guy, you see the guy in person, and you're like, oh, this is a contact hitter for sure. Harold Perez can hit the ball, Jeff. 5 hits this week, all five for extra base hits, a double, a triple, and 3 home runs. He's
Yeah.
not hitting little skimpy singles. Harold Perez is crushing the ball. He's just destroying things. Honestly, he looks really good out of the gate. 8 strikeouts is a little high. He's definitely a bit of a free swinger. He's always been that way. Usually takes his walks a little bit more. He has 2 walks this week, but generally he's a guy that has walked a good amount in the past, even with being a little bit of an aggressive swinger at times. But it's a small guy. He's playing shortstop, but some shortstop. He's playing some shortstop. He's playing some third. He's probably going to be a second baseman. We've said that for a while. I see him being a second baseman, to be honest, but I do think that he can really hit, and he's really hitting in Winston. And this is a guy he's still pretty young. Uh, it's gonna be fun to watch her all keep hitting this season because I don't think he needs to go to Birmingham anytime soon, right? Like he doesn't need to do that. He can be in Winston for the majority of the season. But at 20 years old, right? He's 20 years old this whole season, and he's behind Bergoya in Birmingham, who plays the same position, who's ahead of him, right? I think he'll be in Winston most of the season, but he's going to keep hitting, honestly. I really do think he's going to keep showing more and more with the bat. And if he continue to hopefully reduce the strikeouts a little bit over time, right? 10 walks this season, 19 strikeouts. That's not bad at all. But if he can cut that strikeout rate down a little bit further, then you're looking at a pretty projectable second baseman, in my opinion.
It's hard to look at someone in Winston and say, all right, well, let's project him in Chicago. But wow, if you could have a second baseman with that kind of pop in his bat, which is
Right.
of course what the White Sox need. They need power anywhere they can find it. So yeah,
Yeah, I'm going to answer this one real quick, even though it's back in Birmingham. My answer is no, but we'll see. I think it's possible. I think it's possible. I just am not super high on Gonzalez's overall projection. I think it's a decently well-rounded profile, but nothing that stands out to me in any of his tools to be a key everyday guy. It's definitely possible. I'll continue to watch and keep an open mind there, but I'm not sure how much projection I see from him in terms of an impact everyday type of guy. Continuing in Winston, those are the main hitters we wanted to talk about, right? Was Galaney and Harold
yeah,
Perez, a couple other guys, obviously with solid weeks, all things considered. Caden Connor had a decent week. Wes Kath had a pretty solid week actually, with 4 hits across 3 games. Alec Makrowitz had a pretty decent week, 4 hits in 5 games. Some decent performances overall, but really Perez and Galaney taking the cake there in Winston with awesome weeks.
yeah. Um, but pitching was excellent for Winston last week. The guy who really turned in a heck of a performance was Lucas Gordon. 6 innings, 1 hit, 9 strikeouts. Really exciting to see. And in addition, Tanner McDougal, Shane Murphy also had a couple of good weeks. Rough 2 starts for Seth Keener, but we'll see.
Yeah, let's talk Gordon there a little bit. Gordon, has been pretty good overall. I think that he is someone who definitely projects as floor over ceiling. But this week, right, 9 strikeouts, 1 hit allowed across 6 shutout innings. Like he's definitely shown a little bit more in my mind of the upside front than I expected to see from him, and than what we saw from him last year. I think a lot of his starts last year were kind of just quality innings, getting soft contact, right, and now we're seeing a little bit more swing and miss from him. We're seeing a little bit more stuff come out from Gordon. Another guy that at 23 years old, I think we could definitely see in Birmingham at some point fairly soon this season.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And
Um,
it was good to see Tanner McDougal bounce
yeah,
back. They got sent back to Kannapolis last year. Now he's back in Winston and 4.4 and 2/3 innings, 2 hits, 4 walks, not great, but 7 strikeouts. So a nice step
yeah.
in the direction.
It's super easy to write guys off in general when they're with the organization for 4 years or whatever it is. But you got to remember, McDougal at 22 years old is still younger than a guy like Lucas Gordon, who's just in Winston for the first time last year, right? Or a guy like Seth Keener coming out of college. Like, there's plenty of guys that are still actually older than McDougal are for his level, right? 22, him being in the organization for years now and being, having debuted in Kannapolis in 2023, it's like, oh man, why is he just settling in high A? McDougal's still 22 years old, and everybody in the organization raves about his stuff overall. I'm excited to see it. I think the command is still very in and out, right? Like this season, he has 3 starts made. The first one he walks 4 guys, gives up a few runs. The second one he doesn't walk anybody. He only gives up 1 run in 5 innings. And then this start, he doesn't give up any runs. He gets through 4 2/3 with 7 strikeouts, but walks 4. It's still here and there for McDougal, but his stuff is really good, Jeff. The breaking ball is great. Overall, the fastball's got a lot of life on it. One of the more lively fastballs of these lower level arms in the system. With McDougal, like they're still trying, they still want him to be a starter. That's very clear. And if he's not, that's fine. His stuff should play up in the bullpen. But right now, these starts are good enough starts where I'm encouraged by, the start to the year he's having in Winston so far.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And before we move on to Kannapolis, quick shout out to another former top draft pick, kind of like Dalquist was, and that's Jared Kelly, a 2020 second round pick. He had a night. He's also looking good out of the bullpen now. So I know both those guys sort of had their ups and downs, but it's nice that they're finding a home in the bullpen and starting to pitch well.
Yeah, well, McDougal's surviving in the rotation still, and then
Yeah, I
Kelly
meant
in the
Kelly and
bullpen. Yeah,
Dalquist.
Kelly. Yes, and exactly. Yes. Kelly so far 6 innings. I mean, we talked to him in Arizona, and he was like, "Oh, I haven't been healthy in like 2 years," and that sounded like he really has dealt with a lot of injuries and really has never been able to get fully right. Dealt with some shoulder stuff this offseason, had a procedure to deal with it. Comes back into spring feeling healthy. He's through 6 games, not a run. No runs allowed, 9 strikeouts and 5 2/3 innings for Kelly. So hopefully a guy that could get back to Birmingham sooner than later if he's pitching well out of the bullpen for Winston.
Yeah, yeah.
Heading down to Kannapolis. Man, this Canny team is fun, Jeff. This is a fun team. How many games were you at in Canny this week? A few,
I
right?
don't know. I can't stay away. It must have been 3 out of 6. There's just so much fun.
I don't blame you at all. I think that this Canny team is definitely overall the most fun team in the organization right now, and just a lot of players that we have been waiting to see play in games, and then just continually getting more and more of a sense of who some of these guys are. I'm loving it, Jeff. Take us away. Which one of the hitters in this lineup do you want to start with? Because there's a couple we could talk about, and 2 particularly that were just exceptional this week.
Yeah, 1A and 1B. Let's go ahead and
Yeah.
start with Braden Montgomery. Just a terrific week, 6 out of 17, a double, 2 home runs, and big time home runs. 6 walks, only 1 strikeout, 3 out of 4 in stolen bases. Really looks dialed in early, and you got to think certainly before Memorial Day he's going to be in Winston-Salem. He's just
Yeah,
that's how much he's getting challenged in low A.
like next week, Jeff. I don't think it's that. I mean, my thing with him was like the first week or two, he was swinging and missing a lot. He was really trying to do damage because he's excited. He hasn't played baseball in almost a year with that injury last year. Gets shut down in May in Texas A&M. Doesn't play again until this April, right? So he hasn't played a real game in almost a year. The adrenaline's firing. He's feeling good. He's swinging a little bit freely that first week or two. This week, we see him really get to be Braden Montgomery. This is the Braden Montgomery that is super highly touted, is the guy who can take your at-bats, work counts, take his walks, and then crush the ball when he's given mistakes, right? That's what Braden Montgomery is hopefully going to be, is a player who walks a lot, forces his way onto base, can steal some bags, even for the amount of power he has some legit speed, and the power is very apparent when you watch him play. I mean, you watch his swing. He's just a very, very fun player, man. I'm excited. I can't wait to see him. I think that he's in Winston next week, maybe the week after. I think it's max 3 weeks at this point until Montgomery's in Winston, because even in Winston, he might just do the exact same thing he's doing right now, to be perfectly honest.
Right, right. Yeah, no, I agree. The other guy, and Robert just asked in the chat about Caleb Bonner and how quickly he goes to Winston. Well, that's a different story. He's 19. He's just out of high school, so it is going to take a little longer. They'll probably slow play him a bit, but wow,
Yeah.
really comfortable in low A, and he had a big week, 8 out of 17, 3 doubles and a triple. He really looks comfortable near the top of that lineup.
Right. To answer the question about Winston, I don't think Caleb Bonner needs to touch Winston this year. If he gets there, I'm fine with him getting there in the last month or two of the season. That's fine. there's zero reason to rush this guy. He just turned 19 years old this offseason. He's going to be 19 all year. He's got so much upside and intrigue there that there is no reason for me to push him past this level unless he's just literally tearing the ball off the cover for 3 full months, right? Like, and that could be, he might do that. He looks that good right now. Yeah, like you said, Jeff, 8 hits. The other thing with Bonnemer is like, we know he's going to strike out a bit too, given his age, given his his swinging. He's got a powerful swing. 7 walks, 4 strikeouts.
Yeah,
Love to see that from a guy that
yeah.
age. That is, you're not seeing that from many 19-year-olds. Going into their first year of affiliated ball, right? Like the approach is definitely beyond his years. 3 stolen bases this week. Got some sneaky speed for a powerful dude. I mean, is it crazy? I'll put this one out there for people in the comments that want a little bit of a fired up take right now. Is it crazy to say that Caleb Bonnemer is already the best hitter in the system behind the top four of Caro, Teal, Colson, and the 2 Montgomerys? Yeah, I don't know if that's crazy. I think that right now, if I were to re-rank my top 30 prospects, even from a couple weeks of seeing Bonnemer play, he'd be in the top 10 and he'd probably be ahead of George Walcott, to be perfectly honest. I think that's a hard one, but
Well, yeah, I agree. I would put him ahead of George. George is still struggling, and I would move him up in the top 10. To say he's the next best hitter, I mean, it's only been 2 weeks, 14 games. Even though he
yeah,
looks great, even though he looks
yeah.
great, but there's so much to like there. Yeah.
He's gonna keep moving up this system, I think, and I think he's gonna keep moving up prospect boards. And honestly, I think that Bonnemer is the type of guy who, you know, is going to have a lot of things to be excited about. This week was just kind of a taste of what he can be as a player. I mean, 5 games of just complete impressive stuff from Bonnemer. Gets on base at a 615 clip this week. Just a really, really good player. I think someone that we're going to continue to enjoy watching, and I can't wait to see him can just develop further and further because there's still more to tap into there. There's a lot more to figure out there and to continue to grow upon for Bonnemer. Also, has showed some really good range at shortstop. He's played a couple games at third too, so I think they're prepared to have him have that change where he can play third and still have comfortable, be comfortable at third, get some games under his belt at third base. But for now, he looks like he can play short. We'll see how it continues to grow. And if he fills out and he gets bigger and he moves to third, fine. But right now, he looks pretty good at shortstop. He doesn't look uncomfortable to me at all.
No, I agree. He looks good at short, but he's a big guy, and he's only 19. So,
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
we'll see
We
what
will. We
happens.
will see.
That's a nice problem
We will see.
to have.
Yeah, 100%. A couple other guys to shout out from this group and Canny this week in the lineup: Nathan Archer and Nick McLean, both finding their groove for sure at this level, definitely, which is nice to see. Archer this week goes 7 for 18 with 4 walks, 6 stolen bases for Nathan Archer this week. This is a guy who is kind of touted from what I've heard and from talking to him last year. Like he's very much a guy that is says he has contact and his speed, like that's where he's going to stand out. He's definitely doing that right now. 6 stolen bases on the week is awesome to see. And then Nick McLean, who's had a slow start to the year for sure in Kannapolis, but starting to find his groove for sure. 7 hits and 23 at bats, 2 doubles, 4 walks, 8 strikeouts, and then 4 stolen bases as well for McLean. Is there the whole team is running, right, Jeff? Like you talked to Chad Pinder about this. Everybody's got to check out Jeff's interview with Chad Pinder at AAA Jeff on Twitter. You can go find Jeff's full interview with Kannapolis manager Chad Pinder. Everyone's running, yeah.
It's insane. During the 6 games last week, they were 30 out of 35, which brings their year-to-date numbers to 57 stolen bases and 64 attempts. I think the league is averaging like 32 per team, so they're getting close to doubling the league average. And
Wow.
yeah, and they were just the last game I saw, but I think was Saturday. They had 7 stolen bases in that game alone. So I did specifically ask Chad Pinder about it, and I do recommend people check it out because number one, it's a great insight into what Chad Pinder is all about. All about. He's a really impressive guy, really, really smart, really articulate. So it's a good way to get to know the low A manager, and also, I mean, he just says, look, these guys, it's another part of the game that it's not like hitting and in catching the ball, but it is an important part of the game that can boost your stock. And he said, we want these guys to know how to read, when to steal,
Yeah.
how to steal. Fantastic stuff, and
Yeah.
make exciting baseball.
100%. It's good to see. I think that's something that there's a lot of athletic guys on this Canny roster and coming through the system in general. So if they can run and they can continue to effectively steal bases, like I'm all for a tick up in stolen bases throughout the organization as a whole, because it's not something the White Sox have done well over the past number of years. One guy to mention, we don't have anything we can share here on this front, but it does seem like Casey Salke is going to be out for a little while in Kannapolis. So we'll wait to hear more from the team and from the organization on the Salke situation as the season proceeds. But for now, there's definitely a 4-player mix still. There's so much depth in this lineup in Kannapolis, so you're still going to get an outfield with Walkow, Montgomery, McLean, and Archer as the 4 outfielders in Kannapolis for the time being.
Yeah, I will say this about Salke. I mean, his injury is limiting him to designated hitter, and that's probably going to be the way it's going to be all season, unfortunately. And given the week he had, I'm just wondering if how much he can play through this injury.
Well, he's on the IL now, so
Right, but
yeah,
assuming he comes back, I really have some questions about whether he's going to make it or not. But we'll see,
yeah,
and we wish him a speedy recovery when he does get.
100%.
Yeah, but you're right.
Some
The outfield, the Canny outfield, we've got
yeah.
McLean, Montgomery, and Wolkow. And the first guy off the bench who does some spot starting is Nate Archer. And he had a great week. And I really like his game, Elijah. He's a spark plug I mean, he's the fastest guy on the team. And, he gets his bat on the ball. He's a pretty good bat to ball guy.
Good to hear that. That's another guy who, a later round pick, right? But if any of those guys can continue to develop in the right direction, that's a great piece to add to an already very good outfield group at the lower levels. That'll hopefully Montgomery will be a lot ahead of them, but the rest of them should move together a little bit. That would be great. Pitching side of things in this past week, what do you got from this week? Who was the standout? Because there was one starter I think that was a standout. There was a couple of starters that had some good starts this week for sure, but who was standing out to you?
Well, I just going up on the FutureSox website, hopefully as we speak, or certainly very soon, is I did a look at the entire Kannapolis rotation because they're all off to really great starts. There are about 6 or 7 guys who look really good so far this year. Let's see, who did have this week? I think it was, well, Christian Oppler had another great start, and Nick Pinto had a really good start. Who were you thinking of?
Yeah, I think Pinto had a good start. That's one of the guys I was going to mention, a last year draft pick. A couple other guys. Obviously, you got to see Luis Reyes again bounce back from a tough start the week before.
Yeah.
Justin Sinibaldi had his probably best start of the season thus far. So overall, just quality performances and good outings from all these 2024 draft picks, especially.
Yeah, they all look really good. And I had a chance to talk to Reyes afterward. I mean, and interestingly, as Chad Pinder pointed out to me, Reyes went 5 innings and got the win on Saturday. That's the first win by a Kannapolis starter this season. Obviously, they're
Yeah, a lot of guys going less than 5 innings, which is going to happen at single A.
right.
So nothing
Yeah,
I'm too worried about. Christian Opper is another guy who had a rough start this week, but still flashed a lot of stuff and wasn't missing a ton. Was he? I mean, he still has 6 strikeouts in 3 2/3. In general, Opper is a guy that is going to definitely be on our top 30 come midseason after what we've seen from him already this season. Just purely on a stuff basis, like he's got the best stuff in that rotation, and it's really not close, to be honest. I think Reyes has good stuff too, but right now, Christian Opper, in terms of the refinement and the quality of his stuff, is the best pitcher in that staff. I just think he's got to keep building the innings up. He's got to keep seeing what the command comes along, but very excited to talk to Opper at some point in the future and get to see more of him up close this season.
Yeah, I spoke to him after I think maybe his first start in Kannapolis just to find out what his pitch mix was, because when I saw him, he had a 96-mile-an-hour fastball, and then he had 2 low 70s, upper 80 breaking pitches, and one was a
Yeah.
sweeper, the other was a changeup, and it was a deadly combination.
Yeah, his sweeper is legit. The changeup is coming along. I think it's something he's worked on a lot. So I think if that can be a third pitch that is can show positively, right, to play off his sweeper and his fastball, then you're in a really good spot with that pitch mix at his age. Another lefty who I think the White Sox are good at developing. That's one thing the Sox have been doing well is developing lefties. Let's talk about one guy in the bullpen. There's a couple of guys that had some good outings, particularly though Pierce George. Pierce
Woo.
George is a guy that I talked to him last year after the draft. Seeing what he did at Alabama, he's really had a hard time throwing strikes his entire baseball career. Pierce George's stuff is ridiculous, Jeff. What was he finally had his breakthrough week, I think, after a couple rough games early in the season. He makes 2 outings this week, going 3 2/3, only 1 hit allowed, 1 walk, 4 strikeouts. What did you think of watching George's really good outing in person?
Yeah, he followed up Reyes after Reyes went 5 innings. And Reyes, by the way, one quick comment on him. He has got a phenomenal slider. I mean, it's
Yeah,
something.
it's
He's
great.
19 years old and he's got that slider, so that's something certainly to build on. But George came in and pitched 2 innings, and I mean, it's early in the season, but it was by far the best relief appearance I've seen this year. He had a big fastball and a beautiful slider, and no one was touching him. It was just
Yeah.
2 dominating innings.
Pierce George, when he throws strikes, is the better lower level reliever in the system. I think probably the best. I think that's a guy who, being a college guy, he's 21 still now, so he's still pretty young in his career. He was a draft eligible sophomore last year. If he is throwing consistent strikes, he's one of the best relievers in the system as a whole. And I think someone that could rise up to Winston this season and really succeed if the command progresses the way it has shown so far. So excited to see more innings from him because when he's on his game and he's throwing in the zone and he's throwing where he needs to be making his pitches, it's the most impressive 2 pitch combo of any reliever at the lower levels for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Let's take a few more questions. If anybody has any questions, throw them in the chat. I'm going to ask a few more things here and there. Those are all the players we have to cover specifically. I do want to talk about this because I've seen a few comments on it asked in the chat. Should there be some worry about Noah Schultz? All of a sudden he's walking a lot of people. Yeah, it sucks. Like you don't want to see him walking people. I think it's not fun to watch that. I've been bummed to see it. My answer to that is it's been 3 games and I'm not worried at all. I'm putting no stock in that. I think Schultz is just trying to continue to grow as a pitcher. He's working on some things. Yeah, you've got 8 walks in 3 starts so far. Yeah, you want to see that come down. I'm not worried about it. I'm really not. I'm guys like Noah Schultz, like he's settling into the season. He was pitching in big league camp, which is a lot of pressure, right? Like I don't put any worry stock in someone of Schultz's caliber, at least right now, for at least a month, 2 months into the season right now. I'm not worried about him at this point. Jeff, anything else you got? I'm going to look for some more questions. This is a good question. I'm not sure exactly if Schultz is walking more righties or lefties. I would have to look at that and see. Let's pull up the splits here. Schultz is... 6 of the walks are against righties, so definitely more against righties. That makes sense. That's what I would expect from Schultz. Obviously, it's a harder matchup. I think with him, he's a guy who he can't quite use the slider the same way and as frequently as much against righties for sure. So he's still trying to figure out that changeup a little bit. But again, the fastball's gonna be good enough to get by against most righties, and the slider he still uses effectively. But I do think that he's going to start using that cutter a little bit more, and he's going to start to kind of implement a little bit more of adjustments being made against right-handed hitting. But I'm not worried about Schultz at all at this point.
There's also a question about Bautista, and unfortunately, the news is not good.
Yeah.
I don't know the extent of the injury, but I know it's very serious, and I know we're not going to see him for much of the season.
Yeah, it's going to be a little while for Aldrin Batista, unfortunately, because I was incredibly excited to see him. I'm going to hold off on draft talk for now. I'm not going to act like I've done all my draft research quite yet. I have not done all my draft research yet. Been a lot going on. Haven't gotten around to the draft as much. I think the White Sox in general, a college hitter would be the goal. I've seen a lot of things about, Ava Arquette would be great. He's going to be gone by the White Sox pick. Merrick Houston, I've seen some hype around. I don't love the projection there. I've heard from some people that I know that it's a little bit limited in terms of the upside. There's a couple outfielders that are interesting. Brandon Summerhill is a Chicago guy. I could see that being a thing. Jace Laviolette, it definitely is someone who, if he's able to, he's definitely re-rising his draft stock after having his draft stock fall early in the college season. I need to dive into things more. So at some point in the next, in May, probably we'll get some of our draft guys that I know onto here to give some really good intel. Plenty of people that know a lot more of the college side than I do. So definitely we'll do some research on my own and get some people in here as a guest to talk college draft targets for sure in the near future, but not just yet.
And one last question somebody asked about who filled in for Narvaez and Birmingham. Right now it's Hackenberg and Turner splitting the duties.
Yeah, makes sense there because Michael Turner was already there. Adam Hackenberg doesn't have a spot anymore in Charlotte. He might go back to Charlotte now that Carroll's gone, but didn't have a spot there necessarily. So, filling in there at Charlotte. Anybody else got any more questions? You got anything on your mind, Jeff? I think that's most of what we got. This is another Elko question. We talked about Elko at the top of the episode. I think the White Sox still want Andrew Vaughn to become a good player. That is what it comes down to. He was a third overall pick. The organization put a lot of stock into him. He got a little bit screwed with his minor league development. I think that the White Sox want Andrew Vaughn to succeed, and they're going to continue giving him the chance to, even if he's not doing so. And Elko, you need to see the approach develop a little bit. I think last year he still, even with the production, didn't have quite the approach at the plate to be able to succeed at the big league level. Now he's showing a little bit better. We talked about that earlier. You can go listen to the beginning of the episode. He should soon. That's Jeff and I. I think you can speak for us there, Jeff, saying we would like to see Tim Elko soon.
Trust me, I'm beating that I'm leading that bandwagon for sure. Yeah, because like I said, I saw his 2 home run game, and both of them were well over 400 feet. That boy's got big power.
Yeah, he does. All right. Well, that's all we got today for the FutureSox Roundup. Appreciate everybody tuning in, asking questions. Thank you as always for the engagement. Make sure to follow Jeff along at AAA Jeff on Twitter. I am at ElijahEV8. Follow around the FutureSox page if you want to see highlights every single day of White Sox affiliates. Get excited about prospects, learn about them, see how they're doing. Ian Eskridge absolutely crushes it on the FutureSox feed with videos every single day. Really appreciate everybody tuning in. Thank you, Jeff, as always, and we will talk to everybody next week.
Appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.